Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Quick Glance. My name is Christian Lechner, and with those Quick Glance videos I want to throw a quick glance at several topics from especially the Azure world, universe, however you want to call it. And I want to do some hands-on with things that I think might be of interest for you. Now, what's the topic of this video? We will take a look at an update of the Azure extension for Visual Studio Code. So there was the announcement earlier this week that the redesigned Azure extensions are now available for Visual Studio Code. So they have been hugely redesigned with respect to, well, a very clean lineup and a very harmonized lineup. So this blog post that I will reference in the show notes guides you through what's new. So basically you have now two main areas within the Azure extensions that are called resources and workspaces, both views within your Visual Studio Code extension. And you also have one extension on the, let's say, terminal area, which is called Azure Activity Log. Down in the panel where you can take a look at the activity logs. Now, this is really a huge plus point because when you think about deploying something to Azure from your local setup, this might take some time. And up to now, what was used was the notification area within Visual Studio Code. Now, if you are like me, you probably see the notifications and say, go away. I click on that and move it away. And I also did that because it was kind of in my muscle memory with the notifications when deploying a function app, which took some time. And so I didn't know that they were deployed or if there are issues with the deployment. And this new area then really helps you with that. That's cool. Now, with the rest of the redesign, that's also cool, but that's really a change that happened there. And that's why I want to make this short video about that. Because I have been using the extension, especially for Azure Functions, which is part of this extension pack. And then at that time when I used it, well, it was not really cleaned up. But there have been, as you can see here in this screen from the Azure Functions University, several areas, so several views like resource groups, help and feedback, of course, app service and functions with some very intuitive icons if you want to create functions or if you want to create a function project and so on. Of course, the same was for static web apps, storage, and so on and so forth. Now, if you have all those things installed and get the update of the Azure Functions extensions, and you might not be logged into Azure, for example. When I saw that, I thought something is broken because it's that cleaned up. So let us take a short look at how that extension looks like. So here is my Visual Studio Code. And if I go to extensions, I have the Azure Tools. I have the latest version installed. And this extension pack comprises Azure Functions and Azure Storage and so on and so forth. Now, taking a look at that extension, you see, okay, that is definitely less than before. So we have the help and feedback area where you get started, review issues and report an issue with the extension. So that was kind of there before. And then you have workspaces and resources. And if you are not logged in and you are not within a function project, that's how it looks like. So you have resources, which is completely empty. Okay, you have to select a subscription. That makes sense. And you have the workspaces, which allows you to attach to something. So it seems that I have my Azure running, so I will close that quickly. So that is what it looks like when nothing is running. So you have no storage emulator running, you have no database account attached, or you have no database emulator attached. So it's definitely empty. And the first thing I thought, where the heck do I create my functions? Which is especially interesting if you, for example, want to work with Azure Functions University and you are new to this area. And this can be a bit confusing. So let's go through it step by step. Resources. If we open that up, we see resources remote. Okay, so these are my remote resources. I have to select a subscription. So let's take my subscriptions. Now there is a bit more life. That looks familiar to me. I have my 2 subscriptions there. And if I expand them, I can see several resources that might be available. So the resources depicted here do not necessarily reflect what you have within your account. Those are just the ones that where you have the extensions installed. For example, virtual machines. I don't have a virtual machine running. That was also something that confused me a bit. And of course, you have a function app. I have a function app running, which is the Schema update bot, and I can see that here. So that's okay. So obviously, the extension is working. You have to sign in to get all the information. Now, of course, you can now create resources with this plus button. Now, what's really interesting from my perspective when working with Azure is you have here this second symbol that allows you to group the resources. So you can group them by resource group, you can group them by resource type, by location, and by ARM tag. So if you have a clever tagging strategy, this will now be very handy. Now, if I, for example, group them by resource group, I will see, okay, I have a default resource group because I have the Azure console running, and I have my resource group where I have all the resources in for my Schema update bot. There is some smart filtering, I would say, in there. So I see my storage account and my function app. And there are also other resources that are kind of there, like the application insights and the key vault, which are connected to that one and are also part of the resource group, but are not really, obviously, Microsoft thinks that they are not of central importance now for that grouping. So that's something that I think is really helpful. And if I read the blog post correctly, this is something that will get persisted locally. So if you have set there a specific grouping, this will be persisted. Now, okay. Now workspaces is still quite empty. What I would typically do now is I want to create a function, obviously locally. So that should be the right place with this local description here for the workspaces. So, okay, I guess the plus symbol might do the trick. And here I have create function and I have create HTTP function. To be very honest, I have no idea why the create HTTP function is here separately. That might be the case because of Azure Static Web Apps, but no idea. So let's create a function. So I am within a folder where there is no function project. So I want to create one. Yes. I say I want a TypeScript function. I want to have an HTTP trigger, test, and let's go through there. Now it's creating the project. So taking a look at the files that are created, that looks like we like to see it with Azure Function. Of course, I still have a syntax error because I do not have yet installed the npm package, but that's okay. Now, how does that reflect in the workspace? Well, it doesn't reflect at the moment, so I have to do a refresh. And then you see, okay, I have now a local function project. And within there, I have functions and I have my HTTP trigger test function. And when clicking on that, I jump to the configuration. Well, that's okay-ish from my perspective. Can I do something else there? I can copy, I can execute. I can add a binding. Okay, that looks also quite nice. So I have some context menu here. As the redesign just has happened this week, I guess they are heavily relying on feedback, what makes sense. I mean, anyway, the restructuring was done by feedback because otherwise some things wouldn't be where they are. But I think that one could do more there, but that makes sense from a first perspective what's there. So that doesn't look too shabby. And of course, I can then deploy that to my Azure Functions account. That also makes sense. Now, what about local storage emulation? I can attach to database accounts or attach to emulator. What does that mean? That means I can attach to an SQL emulator or to Cosmos DB. Okay, I don't want to do that. I want to use Azure. There is obviously the option to attach to a local emulator. What now already strikes me is I only have blob containers and queues, so you don't have tables in there. Interesting. I can start the emulator for the different offerings, so like blob and queue. That makes sense because I can start up Azure for different areas. I will start now Azure from the command palette. So I will start now everything. And what happens now is I don't have anymore the option to start Azure from here. Okay, that's good. Now let's see what I can do from here. I can create, for example, a blob container. I say test VSCode extension. That's the name of my blob container. That will now hopefully be created there. Okay, that looks good. Now I can open that in the standard file explorer, of course. What can I do now? Open Storage Explorer, open File Explorer. Okay, I can create an empty blob. I can upload files. I can upload a folder. That I can configure. Oh, okay, I can of course use the static website area in there, and I can delete it. Now let's just upload a file. Now what you don't see is I get a little upload dialog. And what I do now, I fetch a file from the desktop. And now, as I have selected the file, I get the destination directory. I can put it into root or into a directory within the blob storage. That makes sense. That's as usual. So that is now uploading this thingy here. And it's available in this folder. Now, let's see if I can open that in the Storage Explorer. Okay, that doesn't work because, I don't know, because obviously it tries to go to the remote area. That makes no sense. But I have, of course, prepared my Storage Explorer here. And I have my emulator here. And now, if that works, I should see the uploaded image here. Now that looks good, so that works. Now let's see. I mean, that's connected to Azure, right? So I can create a queue from here, and I say test queue. And within the queue, I add a message. This is a test message. That looks good. Now I have with a great typo in my test message. Now let's go back to the to VSCode. So within queues, I see nothing up to now. I have to refresh. And then I see this test queue. I do not see any message. I can open it in Storage Explorer or I can delete the queue. Okay. It's a little less comfortable than the working with blob containers, but at least some basic information is there that can be quite helpful if you develop functions locally from my perspective. Okay, that looks good. So what do we have else? We have, of course, terminal here, and we have this new that I didn't want to do that. We have this Azure activity log section here that was also mentioned in the blog post that I've shown, and here you can see all recent activities. You have to create an Azure resource first. Makes sense from my perspective, so that will only kick in if I would deploy something. Yeah, so let's shortly recap what we've learned. So the new Azure extension, Azure Tools extension, has been largely cleaned up into resources and into workspaces. Now, resources is everything that is remote, and you will see nothing when you're not logged in. That was the same as before, but somehow that looked emptier than before from my perception. So if you log in, you have there quite some nice features like this grouping. That's something that I really like. And then if you want to develop functions locally, for example, then workspace is the right area for you. Here you can attach to storage accounts, especially also to your local emulator, which is Azure, right? You don't have tables there. This is strange. Or maybe that's simply because it's too new. And then you have your local function projects that you can create from here, like you are used to it from the Azure Functions extension. Here you have this generic plus, and this then gives you the option to create a function. And within that, you then see the function. If you jump to that, you go to the configuration. You also have some nice context menu options here, which on a first glance seem to be quite helpful. Now, with that, I hope I kind of could help you if you are as confused when you see this extension the first time, especially if you're working with Azure Functions and try to create Azure Functions locally. But everything is there. It's just a little bit different. We just have to get used to it and train our muscle memory again to use now this different way. And with that, thanks for your attention and see you next time. Bye.